Welcome, 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 everyone. Thank you very much for coming. I'm really excited about all of you that are here today. It's so much fun to see some new faces and new names, and this will be a lot of fun. I am going to talk about when they call it win the breakup. I think everything should be a win-win situation. It's if you are a syndicator, or if you are taking in a partner, or if you are starting a business, there are some very important things that are really necessary that most people never do. And I encourage it all the time. As you know, we raise capital with passive investors, and sometimes people don't have enough money to get into a particular opportunity. So what I suggest they do is either start an LLC, or they could do what's called a buy-sell agreement, because in California, it costs $800 to do an LLC every year. So is it worth doing that? You could just as easily put a buy-sell agreement together. Well, if you're a business person, people that start a business, they have an idea, or they have a product and they think it's going to be great. And so they get somebody either that has money or also wants to be an entrepreneur. And let's just use a retail store, because you all understand retail stores. And they have this product and they want to sell it. And they go out and get a lease, and they put a 5-year lease on, or a 3-year, or maybe if they're smart, they do a 1-year lease with a renewable 5-year lease. And they start this business. And because they have this product, but the things that they didn't discuss were, what does it take to be an entrepreneur? What does it take to run a business? How much time does it take? What's the background that you need for this? And what if something goes wrong? So what do you like to do what are the things that you like to do? Just think of it from your own viewpoint, the things you like to do. Then think about, what are the things that you do not like to do? And then what about the things you will not do? Because a lot of us will do the things that we have to do because they must be done. But there are people that won't do things. And that's what makes or breaks a company. So in the first year, 10% of companies lose a partner in the first year. And by the 5th year, 45% of partnerships break up. And here's the problem with those partnerships. They didn't have anything in writing. They signed a lease. Guess what? They're both on that lease. They're both responsible for that lease. And then somebody says, oh, well, it was my idea, and my idea means so much money. And so they have this, well, I haven't ever been through a divorce, but if anybody knows anybody who's been through a divorce, it's not nice. It can get very ugly. So that's what happens in partnerships. They didn't do a prenup, shall we say. So they just go into it. So that's really what I wanted to talk about today, because syndicators, as you all know, in the real estate world, do the same thing. They don't actually interview each other and find out, what will you do? What won't you do? What's your success? What's your background? How do you know you could do this? And are you the best person to come in to do this? Or is this somebody that should be hired? Little things like that. So all these things that this article talks about, they use words like derailed. Well, everybody could get derailed, right? I mean, I think we're going to see some of that in the future, in the next few years, because syndicators did not put the deals together correctly. A lot of them said that they did take courses, and they were one of them was telling me about a course they were taking, and the fellow that was teaching it told them to force appreciation. Well, forcing appreciation means raising rents. You buy a turnkey property and you just raise rents. Yeah, you could raise them 3 or 4% a year, but you can't go in and raise them $300 or $400, which is what some of these people are planning to do. And what they're not looking at is they're not looking at the economy. So in the last couple of months, well, it's actually been going on for probably a year or so, the cost of food has tripled and sometimes quadrupled. I know that most of you are not in California, but for those of you that are in California, wow, our gas prices have now dropped down to $5.61 a gallon. I know you guys are probably at least $1 below that, but that's a lot of money. And what are you at? You're in New York, huh? You're at $8 a gallon?
Yeah, that's up in the communist state of Canada.
Oh, Canada. Oh, but you pay, $8 a gallon because you guys
Yeah,
pay
yeah,
by
yeah.
the liter. They get you on the liter.
Right. That's exactly
Yeah,
right.
$8 a gallon, you guys. Woo! So anyway, I just wanted to introduce this to you all. And we have people, most everybody here does have some sort of business. And I just would like to get some of your feedback and your thoughts about things that you think could be done to have your business be successful. Things, well, you don't have to ever say that you overlooked anything or whatever. I always think it's somebody else's story anyway, right? Because you probably know somebody that's been through some of these different things. But so I was talking about two people that want to get together and make an investment. And I always recommend a buy-sell agreement. There's many reasons to do that. One of the reasons is, what if something happens to you? What if, Tony Davis was, on our show last week, and somebody back with his big truck, and somebody hit him in the truck. He ended up in the hospital. Thank God he's here today and he's well. But things happen to people, and sometimes they don't come back. So, and we don't think about that. Even though we all know death is inevitable, we do not prepare for it. We're not good Girl Scouts or good Boy Scouts around that. And really, if you have a business partner, or you have kids, or you have any family, that's the way you protect them. And most people don't look at that. So a buy-sell agreement is really simple. It just says, this is how much we put into this business. This is mine. This is this other person's. And should we ever decide we want to sell, this is what our business is. We're going to hire the correct appraiser to come in and look at the business and tell us what its value is. And then this is how it will be divided. It's very simple. If you're doing an investment, you say, I put in 50,000, this person put in 50,000, and this is supposed to pay back in 5 years. The cash flow will go into a certain bank account that will be distributed. And when the investment sells, we're dividing this buy-sell agreement, and it will end, and everybody will get their money. It's rather simple. It's very important, and I bet you Mr. Hollander would have a comment about that as he starts laughing away. So, Mr. Hollander, what do you have to say about that? You're still muted.
There we go. I'm going to let it go for right now.
Are you? Okay. Douglas.
I have a story for you, Peggy.
Douglas,
this is a triggering article in a way, and I can say the article is 1000% correct, and I can say Peggy's advice is beyond wise because I've lived this exact scenario. My law partner and I was in a solo law firm. My mentor went out of town. He didn't want to practice law anymore, so I get a free law firm to a good home, right? So I'm like, okay, this is cool, but being a young attorney and just kind of like, being ambitious, I want to grow, and hey, we're really going to do this thing. And I interviewed somebody basically at a dinner, and on the basis of a dinner and knowing her one other time in court, I thought, and a friend I would say did recommend her, so it's not completely foolish, but the degree at which I vetted her was very, very stupid, looking back on it. So needless to say, the end result was a traumatic law firm breakup and a very, very bitter decade lost of. I hate to say it, but it can really leave a mark when things don't go well. And so I really cannot agree more. And one thing that I really like what you said is a prenuptial agreement. But one of the things I think the Catholic Church, whether you like the Catholic Church or not, one of the things they do really smart is they have premarital counseling. And you should do pre-partnership counseling also. I mean, what are you about? What are your vision, mission? What are you trying to accomplish in life? You have to go deep here, I think, because if you don't have a values alignment, and that's exactly the part of the problem I had, is there was not values alignment. So please, I implore you to listen to Peggy on this, because she's spitting some incredible wisdom.
So Seema has a comment, but do you have somebody that you would say was a good prenup on that? Like your CPA, or
actually, I mean in terms more like coaching, more like a business coach, or more like a NLP, or like a therapist even literally could do this kind of type of stuff. I mean, I will also say in real estate, I think there is a nice middle ground too. You can do one-off joint ventures in real estate that aren't, instead of making a big platform that says we're XYZ properties and we're going to, syndicate until the cows come home, you can do a one-off to get to know each other as well, which I actually tend to think that that's also a good way of doing it too. Instead of making one big marketing platform and really going all in on a partnership, I think it's good to feel each other out and see that okay, we're going to have this discussion about what's our vision, mission, and then we're going to work together on this particular project, just a joint venture, nothing more than this, and we'll see. We're going to date before we get married, kind of thing.
Oh, good idea. Seema.
Okay, so here's the thing. If you don't do an LLC and the operating agreement and all that stuff, how do you file a tax return, do a K-1? I mean, I've always been told that if you have more than one person, I mean, people do single person LLCs, they're useless, but you have to have all that. Nobody has ever said that. And then the lawyers would go broke.
Well,
That was what, and since I can't say anything without making a joke, just like the Catholic Church has premarital counseling, if we had that in an ethnic culture like Indian or whatever, nobody would get married. Are you kidding? Nobody asked anybody what are your
my
values and stuff. They would say, okay, you two, you met each other. You didn't even meet each other, get married. It is like 40 years later, maybe like me, that you go, oh, we think very differently. That was my joke.
well, we laughed. Oh God. Yeah, somebody needs to go. Seema.
That's what Cliff has to listen to every day.
Oh, well, he's so lucky.
I love it.
So actually, you do not need to be in an LLC. You just, in partnerships, you can file separate tax returns. It just comes down to you individually. So you can do that. Always better to be protected with a LLC, simply to protect yourself from lawsuits, et cetera. But yes, there is a way that you can file taxes without being in an LLC. And there are lots of people that do straight partnerships. And the other is, in this article, it says these two gals put like for a 1 year, like to test, like what Douglas was saying, but she didn't even make it through the first 6 months. And but because they didn't have anything in writing, it still turned out to be pretty nasty like that. Yes, Ted. And then Alvin.
Well, the rhetorical question I'll raise at this point is, why are we not willing to ask the hard questions first?
Well, I wish I could answer that. I mean, parents don't talk to their kids about money. And that's something that you use every single day, one way or the other, right? Your electrical bill, your gas bill, driving your car.
Well, one of the amusing lines that I've heard about marriages, which to some extent applies to businesses as well, is that in marriages, men and women get married for the wrong reasons. the joke line goes that women marry men hoping that they can change them, and men marry women hoping that they will never change,
Yes.
and they're both wrong.
They are both wrong. Alvin, you're up.
Well,
Alvin?
yes, I thought it was funny what Seema said, and then to follow that up with Ted's words of wisdom. I appreciate that, because it to me it kind of comes back to what I'm always talking to my kids about. I have a 23-year-old, 20-year-old, and a 16-year-old, and so I reflect on what happened with my relationship with their mother, who's not around anymore. And so, I always tell them that, part of the problem that, people go through when they're young is that they don't even know themselves before they bring someone else into their lives. And then, as you continue to grow and mature, a lot of times these marriages grow apart because you start to find yourself, and sometimes that takes you in a different direction in life. And the same could be true about business relationships, because it's, there are a lot of these analogies that cross over. And so, when you do have a partnership, and it is ironic that this is the topic today. Tyshawn and I were kind of laughing off camera, because we're dealing with this exact same problem right now, because there are other members of our business that we're having some issues with. And so obviously the larger the group, the more issues that are going to come up. But I think the most important part of it, outside of just, what you're suggesting as far as legally how to get things set up so that you're not overly committing yourself too soon, is to go about it in a manner that, you kind of have a couple of one night stands, and then, then maybe, you try moving in together for a few months and see how that goes. And then you make the commitment, drop to your knee, and then, go full throttle. But I think honesty is going to be the key in any relationship, and especially in the manner and how we're going about conducting our business on a day-to-day basis. If people can be more honest with each other, honest with themselves about where they stand and what their goals are in life, that can clear a lot of air between people. It can help focus on what their ultimate goals are and what the ultimate goal of the business is supposed to be. But I think it really does boil down to a person knowing themselves and what their own goals are, to be able to recognize a natural fit for a partnership moving forward. So that's my contribution there.
Thank you, Alvin. Nika.
Okay. Yeah, I have no funny jokes or anything, but mine is actually the complete opposite part, back to the dying, that is like a big one that people say too, that you don't forget or you don't put in, because, maybe all your partners were amazing, but then one of them dies and all of a sudden you got the wife. Like, you need to make sure you put the stipulation, you got the wife or the kid who inherits it, that you need to say what happens in that point. If you die, they get the money, or they have a right to buy out, but they don't have a right to run the business, whoever the heirs are. So, and on that same note, just because I believe a lot in life insurance, is to get key man on your partners. So then you can pay it off and continue the business, especially if that person does have a lot of responsibility or role in what they bring to the table, that you can put someone else into that role, by having a life insurance policy on them. I mean, sorry to say that and think about mortality, but,
Well, it happens.
yeah, it does happen. And, you don't want that to happen. You wouldn't want, me as a partner in something, wouldn't want my partners to suffer should I die. I want them to be protected, just like I would want my son or my family to be protected. The same reason you get life insurance, for the same reason, your people, same with marriage and the partnerships, you want them to be just as covered. So just thought I'd throw that in there as
No, that's good. That's
to think about, who the new partners are. Like, you gotta think of, that aspect as well. So
Right, so you would set that up at the beginning. That's
at the beginning,
Yep.
even in the operating agreement, or, because you can get key man insurance on each other,
Right. And that would keep the business running or give you time to replace, and that would be
Correct.
operating. Yep. Great idea.
Yeah.
Great idea. Cliff, Mr. Bright today.
Yeah, so Nika actually kind of stole a little bit of my thunder. She's in the same thought process that I was in. I was always taught whenever you create your operating agreement for your business, you always start with the end in mind first. How are you going to exit the business? When you exit the business, is it going to be selling, or is it going to be through death? And then who can actually receive the shares or the units? So you can put stipulations in there, so it's not just sold to anyone. Maybe it has to be something that's voted on by the majority of the board, and not just someone that sells their shares to anyone, because you may not want just anyone being a member in your company or corporation. And if there is a plan for how you want to exit the business, that needs to be clearly stated in the operating agreement in the front end. So if you plan on holding it for 5 to 7 years, everyone agrees on that, and they put that in the operating agreement. If the plan is to hold it for 3 to 5 years, that goes in the operating agreement. And if that changes, what are the stipulations, or what has to occur in order for that to change? So all that you need to think all that through on the front end and make sure that that's very clear, and that can avoid a lot of misunderstandings at the back end, because some people might say, well, hey, the market's been really good, I want to sell now, but not everybody's on board with that. And what's the process for managing that if it comes up?
Yeah, so I would imagine that besides having your business coach in this, you'd also want your CPA and your attorney helping you get that set up, and your insurance, your team. So you should have a team anyway. These are your advisors. So your advisory board, your insurance person, your legal, your CPA, your business coach, like all of those people are your board of trustees, however you want to look at them, but they are the key people to your success, because they all have the background you need to put something like this together. Again, to me, it's the what do you like to do and what don't you like to do? And I know that I ran a retail shop for several years, and some of my employees would say, why are you doing that? And I said, because I'm not going to ask any employee to do what I'm not going to do myself. I need to know how much time it takes and how difficult it could be or how simple it could be. So I understand how long it will take somebody to do something and if there's any danger involved in it. And she just kind of was blown away. I don't believe you should ask anybody to do something you wouldn't do yourself, so that you have the knowledge around it. How do you determine how somebody should get paid, right? For one. Yeah.
I think you should also include, how do you actually select someone to be a part of your team? So when you're hiring that attorney or that CPA, does a member just go out and on their own, like the Lone Ranger, just select somebody and say, hey, I've got a CPA for us? Or should that be something that's voted on by the majority, so everybody is in agreement with who they're bringing on? What's the criteria of those members that you're going to have for those people that you're bringing onto your team? What type of experience do they have to have? What type of expertise do they need to be specialized in for your team? So all that needs to be in writing.
Right. It's like what we talked about. If you want to do a 1031 exchange, you need a CPA that understands real estate and 1031. You just don't go hire anybody like that. Ted, you had a comment you wanted to make? Where'd Ted go?
A team is an interesting concept to think about. One of the questions that I've asked people over the years is, if you were going to have a company party, like a Christmas party or something like that, or a company picnic in the summertime, who would you invite and or not invite?
You bet.
Shouldn't the team members all be included? And that, team can include a lot of folks who aren't necessarily officially employees as long as they're all allied for the same purpose.
Yes, and we want the business to be successful. Tim, do you have any comments or thoughts? No. He's a muted no. Oh, he's good. Does. Oh, good. Tim, you have thoughts?
There, can you hear me?
There, we could hear you.
Okay. No, I didn't have any thoughts. I fully agree though with the having a will and having, thinking of the end in mind and the because it's not if we die, it's when we die. I mean, everybody dies, right? We don't like to think about it, but that's the harsh reality. And I have seen, especially in real estate, I've seen cases where somebody dies, they don't have a will or they don't have a trust, and it gets muddy and it gets nasty. And so, yeah, to be prepared ahead of time and know where everything is going and who's responsible for what is a huge thing to do now. So that's my thoughts.
Thank you very much. Seema. We kind of watch the hands, Ted. I'll
There you go.
you next.
Talking about a team, I mean, if you are in a partnership, it may be easier, but certainly as an individual, I mean, Cliff and I have been talking about this for over a year, and I've been looking for 2 years to have a team, because it is almost impossible to have a team, because you may find a CPA who may be, well, CPAs really don't know, as people tell me, they're just number crunchers. Sorry, anybody. But, you may have one person, but you don't have everybody, you don't have the others. So, you may have what's called a financial advisor, but they only love, the stock exchange. So it is almost impossible. And if I didn't have anything else to do, like I spent all my time on this, then I don't know how somebody who actually had a job but wanted to do investments would survive, because for them to find a good CPA who knows what they're doing, a financial advisor, a lawyer, is impossible. The second thing, when you were talking about, if you have a partner and what happens if the spouse dies and all, for my husband's practice, every spouse has to sign a document saying that if the spouse dies, we have no right to the practice. Whatever his shares will get, whatever life insurance they have, the partners have life insurance on other partners, we will get that. But that is it. I mean, to me, it's a given, but I guess in their case, they have to spell it out, that a spouse has has no rights. Of course, in this, they're doctors, so it's not like you can jump in, do that, but they have no financial rights, anything.
Thank you. Ted?
The term will has been mentioned several times at this point. I know a lot of people who represent Legal Shield, and probably many of you know people who represent them as well. One of my questions to folks who represent Legal Shield is, what happens if I don't have a will? The Legal Shield folks should know that in almost every jurisdiction, there is an intestate statute. So in the absence of writing, in general, the statutes of whatever state or country you live in will fill in by default. The way to keep the default from happening is to put what you want specifically in writing.
Thank you. So I'll give you an example of that. I was married to a very lovely young man. We were both quite young then, actually. And we bought a house and moved into the house, and I wanted to create a will before I knew about trusts and things. And he refused. He would not go. I said, okay, we're going to do a handwritten will, because I looked all the information up. He could write a handwritten will and sign it, and that would be good. And thank God I did, because he died. And Otherwise it could have been a mess. So I had that one will, and I was able to take it to the court, and the court's like, yep, no problem, here you go. They made it super easy, which was great. It's really important to have that. I guess some people just think they're never going to die. I don't know. But I had to protect myself. And that's the other thing that people, I know men, the word protect is often used by men, and then I wonder why they don't actually do some of the things to protect. And that would be one.
And if you have children,
Oh,
it
yeah.
is so important. But again, bringing in the ethnic factor, I had to drag my husband after we were married many years for a will, only by saying if we die, who will look after our minor children. The ethnic factor is that if you think about something bad, it'll happen. So if you don't think about it, like I am sure there are Indians running around in the US who don't have wills, because you just don't, it's just a bad omen.
So maybe if they change that word to legacy, they wouldn't look at it as a bad omen. They would look at it as the legacy, which is what the will is the legacy. Set up the legacy. Protect your family.
So you should definitely go way beyond a will and definitely
Of course.
move into trust now, because a will, you still pay thousands of dollars in probate, even if you have a will. So,
Yeah.
Something, Peggy, just to add to that, that's something that is lacking in the Black community as well. And I think a lot of minority communities are starting to catch up to the fact that, we have this stigma about not talking about and not dealing with death, because of, past traumas and whatnot. But the reality is that this is how wealth is passed on from one generation to the next. And this is why there exists such a great wealth gap among minorities in this country, because of things like this, and because of, the addition of, not having discussions about wealth and about money at the dinner table. I remember it was, taboo, for my family to talk about it or what my dad was making. And I think it's that way for a lot of Black families, because there's this whole thing that we have about, letting our business out in the streets and letting other people know what our business is, and things like that. Whereas, and even, that extending to family members, so that there's always this mystery about, how much money is being made, what's coming into the house, what's going out, things like that are important for kids to understand, just to be able to grow up and be able to manage a household on our own. So, for myself, even being college educated, I still had to struggle with, my finances as an adult, and even having kids, bringing kids into the world, and still not knowing how to properly manage my finances and pay taxes and things like that. And so now that I have these discussions with my kids, it's kind of like, it's funny because now I've got my 16-year-old text messaging his friends about how, how come they don't teach us how to pay our taxes in these classes? How come they're not teaching us how to use a financial calculator and things like that? So it's definitely something that, as minorities, we need to, step up the game with, and get realistic about that. And using that word legacy would probably make the difference.
So thank you, Alvin, for that. But I do want to let you know that there is no color attached to the lack of the discussions about money. It's in every culture that I don't know. I do know that my nephew, who is now running his second or third business, his 8-year-old son, because he's involved with it all the time, I'm blown away at the discussions that go on, because they are teaching him. And he was taught that by his mother. But I wasn't ever taught that. I had to learn it myself. Here's all of us. Our parents would sit down and have that conversation with us. So thank you for bringing that up. And then I want to go back to Seema's conversation about the wife. So this 2 men that had this company, one of the gentlemen died. They did not have anything in agreement, and they were not in an LLC. They were just partners, nothing in writing. And it was basically they thought a 50-50 split, but nothing in writing. So here comes the dead gentleman's family who now want their share of the property. They didn't want to get into the property. They didn't want to be involved in it. They just wanted all the money. So they were basically going to force them to sell or figure out how they could get the money. And they made up this number. Well, one of the problems is when you do your buy-sell agreement, you put in that you're going to hire the correct appraiser, because every business has a different, I don't know what the word is, but whatever the net income is or the gross income, however it's decided, is a times number of, I guess, years, but let's say a donut shop is times 2. So whatever they do in 1 year, you pay double that. And that's what the value of the business is, not the property, just the business.
Multiple.
And the multiples, and it's different in each, what's the word I want? Class of business, right? So an industrial kind of business and manufacturing would be very different than a retail, than a rental place, than a dress shop. They would all have different multiples. So that's another thing that really needs to be put in the LLC into the operating agreement, like that. So I'm looking at, I had a discussion with my trust attorney yesterday, and I'm still figuring out, I'd like to be able to give back to the community. So how do I set up something that will give back to the community? And he brought up something about a stipulation for them to, like, I'm talking about scholarships. Well, for them to get a scholarship, they would have to go through some sort of education. Well, as we keep talking about how nobody talks about money, I'm thinking I should put a series together of, I don't know, 10. This would be one of the educations around money. How simple would this be to put a 5-minute video together of, if you're ever going to start a business, here are the things you need to do, kind of thing. So I'm looking at that, and I'm looking at for some ideas about, if your parents would have talked to you about money, what would you have liked them to tell you? So I could put some videos together. So I have a legacy that I could leave, because I think it's important.
Peggy, are you connected at all with Junior Achievement? Is there a Junior Achievement activity out where you are?
I'm not connected with them. But I can write that
Might
down.
be might be a group that you want to look into to see whether there's enough philosophical agreement where there's at least a philosophical partnership, because at least around here, that's the educational purpose of Junior Achievement, is to produce a let's say an understanding among mostly high school age kids,
Right.
about what let's say financial literacy is about.
Okay. Yeah, we do have them. I've talked to some of the kids when we interview.
Yeah, there may be some other ones where you are, but Junior Achievement's is one that's around here.
Yeah, and I'm looking into another group that
I'm a business teacher here in New York. I teach in a program called Virtual Enterprise, and I'm currently working on a unit trying to launch it next year in real estate, because I've gotten heavy into real estate in the last couple of years. I teach Junior Achievement in my classroom as well. I teach high school students.
great.
In economics. So if you want to find a high school program and you want to plug in, I can definitely help you with that. If you want to help develop curriculum, I'm a high school administrator. I'm willing to help.
I already put one together.
All right. So
nobody
again,
wants
I'll put my
to-
contact information in the chat. We can get that in front of some if that's good information, we can get in front of people.
Yeah, I put that together years ago. But
Sean, you were saying you teach economics?
Yes, I'm a high school
Oh.
teacher here in New York. I teach
Yeah.
high school business, economics, and technology.
So my older daughter, I'm from Buffalo. My older daughter did AP Economics. And the
Yeah.
only thing she took from it was she came home one day and she asked us, "Are you guys saving for my retirement?"
But are you
One of the
guys
things that I
saving
tell,
for
one of
my
the things that I
retirement?
tell the ninth graders is the one of, and I'm not familiar with the sequence of classes in other places, but it's a shame that that class there is taught in the last semester of high school. So
Mm.
I've implemented some of those elements of economics into my ninth grade classes, because why do we, when, as Alvin was talking about earlier, when the kids start to ask, why are we learning something? For example, implementing the economics in ninth grade shows you that when you're in your math classes, why you need to pay attention if you're going to
Oh,
ever
yeah.
get to that financial calculator. So making sure that you drop those carrots for them to be able to find them along the way so that they can find their way ultimately is, the goal.
Yeah.
Teaching
So
kids how to do basic math in their head is also important, because they
well,
need to be
that
able to
they
think
don't
through
do.
numbers quickly.
That they don't do in the US. They do that in India. And, like my husband can do it in his head, I can't. But the same daughter, we told her we were barely saving for our retirement, let alone hers. Fast forward, almost 2 decades, she's 33. Last week, she got her first real paycheck because she's been a resident, hasn't earned much. So she got her first real paycheck. And she used a few swear words I didn't know she knew, because of all the deductions that she saw on it. And she got really mad. What is this? I'm almost paying half of it in deductions. And I went, yeah, welcome to our world. You're frigging 33 years old. I didn't say that, but so, and part of it, is our fault as doing really well in life, and we just did not teach them. I never thought of it, and it's not a subject we discuss. Anytime they wanted to know how much my husband earns, he would say, "Why do you want to know? Is there something you want?" Same thing with me. I just sign on a piece of paper. I didn't know what was in those 500 pages of his return, but yeah. And now when I'm trying to teach, it's really hard because, they don't listen to you anyway.
The fun line for the kids as they get old enough to understand it, which I used with my own kids, was, as you get older, then it will be your job to keep me in the style to which I would like to become accustomed.
Right? Because they don't have that first discussion in the grocery store. I have this lesson that I think opens doors for parents. They don't see this as an opportunity, and I do. I don't have kids. So when you're going through the grocery store, because that's where I usually hear it, and you're pushing the kid in the grocery basket, and they go, "I want that. I want that. I got to have that." And what does the parent say? They say no, or not now, or they give it to them, but no. And they don't see that as an opportunity to say, "Oh, you want that? You could have that, but you have to earn the money for it. How would you do that?" Here's the first opportunity to have that conversation. And parents don't even know that opportunity, they passed it up. So I actually spoke to a lady in the grocery store one day about that, and she said, "I never thought of that." So I don't know what she'll do with that, but I said, don't stop your kid from negotiating. You want them to be good negotiators. Just tell them they have to figure out how to earn it, and they'll figure it out. And they will. And people think, oh, your kids are too young. Well, we started our nephew, he's my nephew, my sister's grandson, at 2 with 4 jars. Jar 1 was for savings, jar 2 was for spending, jar 3 was for investing, and jar 4 was for gifting. And he got his $1 every week in 4 quarters. And he doesn't know about 3 of the jars, but one of them is always empty, I can tell you. And one day he'll have enough quarters in his investing jar to do something. But because we started that conversation when he was 2, he understands it all. And he wanted to buy some gifts, and he didn't have enough money in his spending. And he did borrow money from his grandmother. because she's an easy touch. And yes, he did pay her back. I asked, did he pay you back? And she said, yes, he did. So he understands enough about money and the responsibility that goes with it. And he's 8. He's in because they've had that conversation going for 6 years. And it's not like anybody, pounds him with it. It's just that he's around it and people don't feel that they can't talk around him.
Peggy, a question about that. Did he get hard money rates or was this more like agency paper?
More like agency paper.
Right.
Hard money rates. No, it's just sitting in a jar doing nothing, which is the same as putting it in the bank right now, except it's safer in the jars. So we don't know if those banks will be around in the next 5 years. Anyway, so anybody else have a comment or a thought? Would love to hear it. We're almost to the top of the hour.
I just put a handful of suggestions for what we should be teaching our kids in school, in education, in financial literacy, because there's so many things that are missing today.
But they don't want you to learn.
I know.
They want you to get a job and be a W-2 for the rest of your life.
A contributor, a consumer, but
Worse yet, they want people to work for the government.
Yeah, I heard Tashwan talking about what he's doing, and I like it. And we just need more of him that's out there. And there's just a lot of things I think that kids should be taught today, and it's not going to come from traditional methods of education. People need to step in and just take charge and make these things happen.
And don't most kids come up with ideas that are far more creative than just straight plain old buy sell? I mean,
Let me to add another idea too. And I wish this was, I had my own lawn business and I'm glad for it because it did give me an idea about sales, but boy, teaching sales to kids is such a wonderful idea because if you can sell when you're young and you get over the resistance to, picking up the phone or knocking and getting used to know, if you can get used to know when you're in your teens and whatnot, and you get comfortable in that environment, you're going to do well.
Yep. Well, there's always a final no before yes. So
I agree with that wholeheartedly. That would be tremendous. That and requiring that every kid read The Richest Man in Babylon and test on it before you graduate from high school. I think it's a shame that that's not required. But also, Peggy, I did want to share that being exposed to, since I've been involved in real estate, has exposed me to the fact that it is a common issue among everybody, all Americans, that not just minorities in particular. We just tend to focus on our own problems in particular and think that it's exclusive to us. Whereas, being exposed to many different people, over the course of being in real estate and being comfortable with having money discussions does bring that out. So so I do agree with you on that.
thanks. Marcy,
A fun way to learn about selling is to go see what used to be a Broadway show decades ago. It's now in community theaters all over the place. Show's called The Music Man. And then we can have a good conversation, especially in our networking groups, about what's the difference between a salesman and a con man.
I don't know.
I feel like waiting on the punchline for a joke.
It doesn't.
Not much.
Not much. I don't see a difference.
Not
I would
much.
say intent and integrity.
I would claim there is a very clear difference between a salesman and a con man.
Yeah.
The function of both is to make promises. The difference between a salesman and a con man is that a salesman's promises get kept.
Oh, okay. That
Very
makes
well
sense.
spoken.
That's why I said intent and integrity.
Right. Intent.
You're going to actually follow through on those and provide what you say you're going to provide. Yeah. And the con man is not. Yeah.
Maybe intent, but certainly not integrity, at least not in real estate, mostly from what I've seen with my local groups. So, but then I have my own issues with them.
So on that
Well,
note,
almost every small business is based on, let's say, soundly based on the concept of a tripod. One leg is sales, one leg is production, the third leg is administration. The job of sales is to make promises. The job of production is to keep the promises. The job of administration is to keep everybody informed, keep them technologically equipped, and keep all the people who don't belong out.
Good thought. All right, stopping the recording.
Well, you called on me, Peggy, Marcy Green. We kept things very simple. My mother was I was out here in California. My sister was in Virginia. My brother was in Philadelphia, where we all grew up. And when my mother was a widow, and my sister, my brother, and I talked about, well, how do you handle things? Well, very simply, my sister, and we all agreed, my older sister, and my mother agreed, where she and my sister and my mother had a joint bank account, or a couple of joint bank accounts, whatever. And when my mother passed away, it was very simple: divide by 3. And also some certain things. My mom had a fur coat. She had some silverware and some jewelry. And I didn't want a fur coat in California, so my sister-in-law did. And I don't know, some of the silverware and so forth, I said, I don't need it out here. So we just divided things up, and no problem. We did when we were growing up. That's not to say we didn't have fusses and arguments and so forth. But when it came to just dividing up money, it was just very simple, and none of us had a problem with it.
That's great. That's so unusual. So
Yeah.
thank you very much for sharing that, Marcy. I really appreciate it.
That's not common necessarily.
Yeah,
I have lost millions of dollars in India because my aunts didn't give my mom's share of our grandfather's inheritance to me. So, and American bills don't apply to India. Plus, you can't sue somebody who's a who's who, who knows everybody from the president of India down. So it is unusual if there are no children to pass on everything to, for sisters or for siblings to divide assets without any issues.
Yeah, even when it's in writing, that happens. So thank you everyone for coming. We're so thrilled you were here today. And we don't have a speaker for next week, so we're really looking forward to somebody saying yes to be interested.